Hi, I'm Trent Apton. I'm going to take you through some of the elements of PhoTable and the Cruiser framework. Now these elements roughly correspond to chapter 4 of my thesis, and I'm about to go to a higher camera angle. If you still want to look at my face, there's a video object on the table which will appear occasionally. So I've cleaned up the table to show you some of the basic interface actions, and the first one in chapter 4 is select. So to select something, you just touch it with a pen or stylus. And in our touch interface, of course, you use a finger. And once things are selected, you'll see it's selected with a red boundary. If there's a second user here, they get a different color. And once it's selected, you see there are the hotspots highlighted. So on this image, there are corner hotspots, which will rotate and resize. So I'll show you that now. I've got rotate and resize. So I can show you with a second pen. This actually corresponds to the second user. Now when we select things, we'll actually get a blue boundary, so this corresponds to the second user. And also all their interaction will be in a blue color. Okay, the next interface element is move. So to move something, you just drag the image around the interface. And hopefully in the video you can see this is quite responsive on our interface, and we're also dealing with some very high quality images here. So moving, very simple, just drag it as you would a physical photograph on a table. Another aspect to move is flicking. So flicking occurs when you release an image with a particular momentum. So if we're moving the image, so I'll just move it closer so I can show you, flicking the image just involves releasing it with some momentum. Okay, we trigger some actions when flicking occurs. So when the image hits the side of the table, we actually use this as a trigger to send the image to a wall display that's in that direction. You'll see that it gains momentum based on the velocity of the release. So when you release it, depending how fast it's going when you release, it gains momentum. And if you flick very quickly, it gets a lot of momentum and goes to the other side of the table. So you can use this to send objects to other people on the side of the table. So I showed you the rotate and resize action a little bit earlier. I can show you a bit more about that if you like. We've got the idea is that when you select the object, your selection point remains attached to that area of the photograph. So I can show you that here. There's someone in a white coat. If I zoom in, I can show you that. So off in the corner here, we've got someone in white. If I touch this person in white, then no matter where I move my pen, the same person in white will be selected. And so this is to try to keep the tight physical coupling with the virtual objects people see on the table and what they expect from physical objects. There's of course a minimum size. If you make things too small, it'll be too hard to make them bigger again. So we impose a minimum size on objects, which you can see here. And as for a maximum size, really it's as big as you can get to the edge of the table. And in fact the technology we're using here for the input can actually extend beyond the edges of the table, so I can keep dragging this out to make the object bigger. So another part of rotate, resize, we call this gesture row size, is a way to flip images over. So if it's a photo that's oriented towards you, there's two ways to rotate it around. Some people can go around the edge like that, or you can just go straight across to the opposite corner and that'll perform a flip. So you can see that occurring on this image here. Now I showed you the rotate, resize, or row size hotspots are the corners of the image. There's also hotspots in the center of the image. So this area here is for flipping. So when we flip an object, you just grab the flip hotspots, and you'll see again we've got the image being attached to the touch point. So as we move it around, we get the reverse side of the image. And you can see here we've got the name of the image on the back that says Hyde Park, and we've got some other attachments which are some audio that was recorded earlier. Okay, so to record audio you hold down for a second, we get a little green dot here, and this is corresponding to my voice when I record some audio. So I've got an environmental microphone there to pick up conversation. And this is corresponding to my voice when I record some audio. Okay, so when you stop the audio, it immediately plays back what was recorded, and it'll attach it to the back of the image. So before we had two objects here, we've now got three, and again dwelling on an audio object will not make another recording
corresponding to my voice when I record some audio.
But it will play back the audio that was recorded. And these audio objects are saved to disk, and when the interface is restarted, we load these all back in and attach them to the photograph. So there are a couple of dwell actions. Remember, you've got record audio and playback audio. And we've also got some special dwell actions for other images, which I'll get to a bit later. So also in dwell, we've got a way of keeping writing around. So I'll show you, there's a few ways to create writing, but you can see when I draw on the back of the table, so on the background, it creates some writing. Now, a lot of the time this will be accidental, so if we let go quickly, these writing things that we make will disappear. But if we want it to stick around, we can hold down for a second. There's a little white dot that appears here. That means it's going to stick around, and you can now drag this around. And it gets momentum, and we can delete it. And I'll explain deletion shortly. And we've also got a dwell on the background. So dwell on the background will start a zoom, which will zoom in the entire table to towards the point where the pen is. And tapping again will reset it. We now move on to higher level actions. So everything so far is required a touch, dwell, or drag. So you'll see I haven't taken more than one object and caused them to interact with each other. It's all been done with this one object. Selecting it, moving it, rotate, resize, flipping it, and dwelling on that. The first one we talk about is the black hole. Now the black hole has been sitting up in the corner, and I've used it a few times already. The black hole is our object for deletion. So when we want to delete something, we just drag it into the black hole, and it gets sucked in. And you can move the black hole around, as I showed. As it moves over things, it will start to suck in everything that it comes into contact with. So this is one of the ways we cause objects to interact to perform high-level functions. So I need a few more images now, so I'll drag some up here, create some, just so I can delete them again. And so you can flick these into the black hole. If the black hole is sitting on a distant part of the table, we can flick them in. And we try to get it to obey some physical properties, so we sort of do a kind of orbit. But we can also use the black hole kind of like a vacuum cleaner for the interface. So when we drag it over things, you'll see they get stuck in. If we let go and drag the black hole again, it picks up all those images, so we get kind of a black hole. Now the black hole's kind of interesting. It has sort of this sphere of influence around it. So when I show you this, you can see at the top there's an image that's stuck on the side. So this image we might want to get back, and we can do that by making the black hole smaller and then dragging the image out the top, and we've got our image back. And we have things on the edge of the black hole. We're sort of supporting stages of deletion. So things on the edge there will keep moving around with the black hole, but you can easily get them back again. And when we go further in to get them out, we'll need to make the black hole smaller. If things go very close to the center, or if they've been flicked in on an orbit, they're very close to the center of the black hole, and we can't get back at them by making the black hole smaller. So to get these objects out, we can actually flick the black hole. So as I showed you flick before, when we flick the black hole, stuff inside it starts to fall out of the back of the black hole. And that's how you get things out of the black hole. So if you want to delete things permanently from the black hole, you can dwell on it. So this is another dwell action. And dwelling on the black hole immediately causes those things to disappear. Okay, so the next item in chapter 4 is framing. So I've had this object lying off to the side, which is called the frame, which you can read on it there. But it's got a very distinctive shape, so probably the text there will be a bit superfluous for expert users. Now the frame is used for a few functions. It can be used to crop images, but also to make a collage. So I'll show you crop first. You can make this image big, and you'll see there's some people there. So if I want to take a cropping of those, I can dwell on the frame, so another dwell action, and this creates a cropped area of that photograph. So these two people here, which I zoomed in on, and can make this bigger. It's a very rapid way to zoom in on a area of photo. So also this cropped image that you make is saved to disk, and I showed you before the file name is showed on the back. So we make a unique file name here based on the time the user did the crop and the original file name. But there's actually a couple of stages to the cropping that we do. So when we crop something, we do a very fast crop to get the initial image when it's created, but then we upgrade this on disk. So there are some limits to what we can display on the table based on the amount of video memory that we have, and so we can't do the best quality crop possible by just using the contents of the graphics card currently loaded. So we do something in the background which loads that that does a high quality crop on the original file. So if you have extremely large, tens of megapixel images, you can still view them on the table, but it'll initially scale them down, but if you want to zoom in further, you can use the frame to crop out a section and get it upgraded. So the other thing that the frame does is a collage. So I'll get some different kinds of images here. And so to make a collage, this was initially inspired by the desire to make a postcard for people to send to people while on holiday. And so to make a collage, it works pretty much the same way. You create the area of the, so you highlight the area that you want captured with the frame and hold down for a second, and in from the corner will fly this new image, which is a collage of the objects there. That's a pretty ugly image, so I'll try and do a slightly nicer effort. So I'll put these people on some water. And so we can frame out that section. And so there we have some people on a sky. For the frame, we might want a different aspect ratio for the crop that we make. And so the frame, it doesn't make much sense to flip over, so we repurpose the flip widgets and allow these to change the aspect ratio of the frame. So we can now crop this image and we get a fairly lengthy skyline image from this original photo. The next thing I'm going to talk about is item attachment. I showed you flipping before. So here we've got a flipped object. And when it's flipped, the reverse side of the image becomes a special area for attaching new images. So I can attach a new image there, and it'll get attached to the back of this image I've got. Things will automatically lay themselves out, and if you want to size things to fit in multiple columns, you can resize them on the back of the image. So these are all now attached to the back of the image. You can move this image around and flip it back over and access these objects, drag them off if we want. You can see it flashing there. This is giving feedback, telling you that things have been attached. On the back of images, we're aligning everything so that it matches the parent, so we can rotate things, but they'll just snap back to where they came from. But we do allow people to resize, so when you resize on the back, it's of course changing the size and performing the layout. There's this one here is an audio object, so we can remove these as well. And this is the way that you get rid of unwanted audio, so you just chuck it in the black hole. Okay, now I'm going to talk about browsing. Browsing is how you bring out new photographs onto the table, and I've been using it a bit already to get some images to show you deletion earlier. What we've got here is an image of the browser. That's what it looks like, and it's got these objects in the center. Now at the moment they're fairly low quality, which you can't really tell from the video, but they're a bit blurry, and dragging one of these off will go fetch the high quality file, the high quality image from the file on disk and load it into the interface. And this is how you can pull out new images. So you can rotate and resize the browser. Obviously everything inside it is rotating and resizing with it. And you can move the browser around by grabbing it on the edge. We've also got a transparent image in the browser here, which is a picture of Albert. And we've also got some maps. So I'm not sure if you'll pick it up in the video, but we've got a fairly high detailed file here with some text on it. And you can actually get it to a point where you can read some of this text quite easily. So to clean these up, we can chuck them in the black hole. We don't need them. This is a sort of a default folder that we start up with. When you want to browse new images, you might have them already on a USB key. So I've got my special pod here with USB ports, and I'll plug in the USB key. So when we do this, it's going to scan the USB key and look for any photographs on there, and it also gets the most recently modified file as the first thing to bring out. So that was what it decided was the most recently modified file. Okay, so the browser has two modes. I'm currently showing you the mode which has the items arranged by folder. So on this USB key, there's a root folder which has these images on there, which is a cow and some money. These will load a tiny bit slower because they have to come off the USB key, of course. And there's also some subfolders that's detected that have images. So I won't show images that don't. I won't show subfolders that don't have images, but it's got some of these. These are some images arranged. Now these have been pre-categorized, so this might not be realistic for people's actual photographs that they've recently taken from a trip. But if someone's organizing some documents or has brought some images to discuss with a client, say, set of folders for browsing and images. Okay, and you can see the photos that are on the disk there. And you can probably even see the USB keys flashing each time I pull up the new image as it fetches the image data. But it'll cache most of it, so if we pull up one that's already been loaded, then it doesn't need to go back and look at it. So I've just started the table with the browsers in their other mode. So in this mode they have a way to cluster objects. So there's a slider down here which can change the number of clusters that you see, and pulling out a cluster will pull out the images inside the browser. And I'll show you with some photos later how that helps with photo browsing. You'll notice when images are dragged out of the browser that copies are created. So each of these is a copy of the original image, and you can pull out as many as you like each time creating a copy. But some of the other objects on the table we can't copy in this way because they're not attached to a browser. So we've got another way to copy, and that's with a special object that we call the copier. So the copier is this object here. You can see it looks different from images. It's got copier written on it. It doesn't have flip widgets, and it looks a bit like a Office photocopier. So to use the photocopier, you swipe an object over it. So this is a fluid action. You just swipe it into the object like that, and you can see it gets attached there. And to replace the object in there, you just do another swipe. It'll appear in there. You can do that with any object, and this allows another way to copy objects. So we can make as many copies of these, and it works kind of like a browser. So there's only ever one image in there, and we can also copy images or objects that aren't in a browser. So these special objects here, which I'll talk about later, can be copied, and we can also copy this video that's been playing. And you can see there's now lots of me as I interact with the table. Now we can clean up with the black hole. Just put that off to the side. Another thing the copier object is good for copying is storage bins. So storage bins are simply colored objects which have storage bin written on them. And when we copy these, we actually get a new color of storage bin. And we can use these for and managing objects on the table, and they're sort of infinite sized bins for storing objects temporarily, and so we can chuck whatever we like in here, and these storage bins will size to fit, so we can just keep putting objects in here. We can get some images from the photocopier, and we'll just fit everything in here. So the layout we're using is it's called a space filling thumbnails layout, which someone else thought of, and that's what I'd use. Move things between storage bins, and you can see they'll automatically lay out so that everything fits. The next section in chapter 4 talks about interactive images. So I've had these sitting off to the side. This is an interactive image, and you have to take my word for it. I'll show you that you can actually interact with this. So what we're running here is actually Google Maps. So you can see we've got the Google Maps controls on the side of the image here, and we can zoom in and out of the map. Of course there's some lag because it's going over the internet, and it pulls in the new Google Maps. And the way I'm interacting with these is by pressing an extra button which is on this pen. So you can see here, these buttons are used for other purposes. So when I have a regular image which isn't interactive, pressing these buttons will actually allow me to annotate the image. So I can circle this object here, and I can write this is a crane attached to a building. And of course you can make mistakes. So if I made a spelling error here, I can drag off the text and write a new annotation. But they are cranes, so okay, so that's annotation. Now going back to live images. So live image here, this one here is running Google Maps. And the way we're running it is by just exporting a special VNC display. So it doesn't have to be a web browser, it can be any application. Here we've got a photo editing application, so at the moment it's a blank canvas. But we can draw on it, so again I'm pressing the button and I can draw some capsicums on this canvas. I can change the tool, can just use a normal brush, and we can use this for writing if we want. These interactive images inherit a lot of behaviors from regular image, but of course the function has changed a little bit. So for example, we can make copies. I've now got copies of the interactive image, and these are both interactive. So if I wanted, I could orient this one to my colleague on the other side of the table, and I have my own. And now we can each create a drawing collaboratively with our interactive pen. Oh, and you can also crop. We've got the overview window in the corner of Google Maps over here, so I can crop out this area, and we've now got a cropped region of the original interactive image. So if I put that off to the side and pan around this map, you can see that the overview window is also getting updated. The next special object in chapter 4 is the video object. So we have a video here which is recording me. I've got a webcam set up at the edge of the table, and so you can see you can see my face, and this is a live bit of video. And I showed you earlier making copies of special objects. So if I put these in the photocopier, I can get lots and lots of these videos scattered around the table. And we've also experimented with cropping the video. So if I crop out an area of this video, so I'll try and get my head, and I'll create a cropping of my head. So this is now a zoomed in area of the original video here, which includes the table in it as well. But this one's just my head. And now there's lots of me on the table, so I'm going to clean up. I'm now going to move on to PhoTable. The first aspect of PhoTable is the introduction of someone's digital photos. So I have a digital camera here. I'll start by taking a photograph of the table in its current state, and my hand in it too. Take out my camera memory and put this onto the table. So what I've got on my camera memory is a lot of photographs. There's about 1,000, and the first thing it does when you put it in is it's now searched the entire contents of the camera memory, and it's loaded all of my photographs into these clusters. Now I can change the number of clusters, so So I could do one cluster, but that's not going to be very good for browsing through my photographs. It allows you to browse your photographs. So this cluster here is objects taken most recently, and this image here is the photo I just took at the table a moment ago with my camera. Now, let's put that into the last cluster. Some might argue that it should have a cluster of its own because it's been such a long time since I've taken a photo with my camera. But that's not very good for photo browsing. It's kind of a waste of a cluster. So the algorithm's got some techniques for clustering these intelligently. Any evidence for the techniques used here? So there's a big clump of people, someone playing guitar, yep. And if we move into the cluster before that, we've now no longer got things of someone playing a guitar, but these are all photographs from a graduation, put into the graduation photos as well. And we've got some graduation photos. If we go into the cluster before that, we've now no longer graduation, but some photos from a party. So it's clustering all these based on the timestamp that comes with the EXIF data. So there's no tagging of these photographs. You can see the, for example, the file name is just going to be the serial number that the camera puts on there. We can go back to some of the earlier photos, and we just browse the same way through the cluster. These are fairly high quality photos, and there's a bit of a lag when it goes to fetch the original file. But the interface remains responsive, so you can even see the video over there of me. So when I drag off a new image, there's a very slight pause as it pulls in the high quality photo from the system memory into the graphics memory, but it's very brief. And this is kind of a necessary pause. And so this is how you browse images with PhoTable. So I'm going to finish up by doing some stress testing of the interface. So just to give you an indication of some of the performance. So you can see there's video images. These are updating constantly. And it's fairly well able to process the video. There's a slight delay, but it's not too bad. The responsiveness, of course, has been quite good all throughout. Obviously, you can't compete with physical interaction, but this lag actually comes from the hardware. The interaction you perform with the mouse is spot on. But I said here, we could put it into one cluster, but we don't really use that for browsing, but we can use it to show the speed of the interface. Now these are all coming off some camera memory, which is attached through USB. And so there's some limits here. We've got about 2 gigabytes worth of photos in here. We're not going to try to transfer all of the photos onto the table, but we can instead just grab the EXIF thumbnail from each of the photographs. And because it's camera memory, it's flash, so it's nice and quick to get to the right points of the file. And we've got here about 1,000 photographs from my camera. And the responsiveness isn't really affected. You can see we can even count the number of photos we've got here. So down the side here we've got 1, 2, 3, maybe about 30 squares. So at least 900 photos here. And each of these can be interacted with just fine. And we can pull it out. Now, 1,000 photos is a lot. I can pick out some of these photos. So I know this photo here is a fake Ferrari that was sitting in Florence. So you can see the logo says Ferrari, but if we look at the car, it's very much not a Ferrari. We've got a little car there. So this can be used to find photos, but it's not really realistic. So we can recluster these. Again, you can see the reclustering is pretty quick. It's a linear algorithm.